Good morning, and welcome to another haphazard edition of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. And now here's your lethargic and somewhat run-of-the-mill host, Voice of Doom. Daja Sao Sheng Hao. That means everybody good morning. I'll say it in my new adopted language just to get used to it, even though the morning isn't that good. Hodgematodge of commentary from me right now because there's a lull. There's no major disasters. But it seems to me that there's some loose ends all over the place. And that's why this is going to be a disjointed and lethargic and haphazard episode. Because the world is haphazard. And so you have to kind of get into the swim of it. Kind of get into the same rhythm of chaos in order to understand it. Because it's incomprehensible. Okay. Everyone knows that this horse business is a, what do you call it? A straw man, I guess they call it in the media. It's supposed to be a distraction. And all the smart people in the media know it's a distraction, and you know it's going to take our eyes off the ball. And so let's talk about the horses for 2 or 3 days. Let's talk about the horses and how it's a distraction. They're doing what they want them to do by talking about it. So that's stupid. The media's brilliant. I mean, they could talk about a lot of things that may be less exciting than, straps and reins. That's, I don't want to talk about it. You could talk about China or Kashmir, or you could talk about Pakistan and India being kind of not on the best of terms, and you could talk about Pakistan trying to have influence in Afghanistan. You could talk about explosions in Jalalabad. Or you could talk about Zemariah, Nazir, Zamir, Faisal, Farzad, Malika, Arwin, Benjamin, Hayat, and Somaya. And I'm not going to let that go because I went into the Google thing, and I typed in Afghani family funeral just to see whatever comes up real fast. And there's an LA spread of pictures that I think everybody should look at. They're not going to look at my video, so they won't look at that. But they should look at it because it's pathetic. And the Afghani people are very tolerant. They don't look, they look grief-stricken, but they don't look like I would look if my family was blown up. And his name is Ramal Ahmadi, I guess. It's hard. I'm trying to learn Mandarin. At the same time, I had to pronounce these people. AH is ACH. And if you go to different places, it's Emal. But Ramal, he's the brother. And he looked devastated. And I don't blame him. Because 3 of his kids were killed. So to break it down, just to get, more kind of personal, where we can kind of relate to them being people. Zemariah is the father. I believe he was 40. He's engineer, and he was just working, and part of his work was helping with the aid. Nazir was 25. He's a nephew. No, excuse me, Zamir Ahmaid. And he was about to be married in a week. So his wife was looking forward to a family and starting a life together just to be blown up. The wife, I don't know. She'll probably marry a Taliban. So that's beautiful. Nazir was the soldier, and I believe he was 28. And he fought for the Afghan army, and the Afghan army was hung out to dry because it could have easily been alleviated. I already told you before. You wean them. You keep a force in there to help. America, with 2 or 3 jets, can probably, with well-trained pilots, can really discourage an incursion. They did it all wrong. The soldier could have still been there fighting. He wouldn't have even had to fight if they had done it right in the first place. He'd be keeping the peace. But instead, he's waiting patiently for his papers. The bureaucratic thing from America so that he can get to America. You need bureaucracy to get to America from Afghanistan. You need papers and forms and visas. Whereas people coming in from the southern border don't need papers because they don't have papers. They just have the knapsacks. So I don't see how people can't see the madness. Faisal 12, Farzad 13. I'm just kind of guessing at their ages. But 3 of the kids were Ramal's, who is alive to see his kids die. And the other 4 kids are Zemariah's and the mother, who I don't know what's become of her. But I hope she's okay. I don't think I saw any pictures of her at the funeral. At least no captions that depicted who she was. And I don't want to see it in a way, because I don't want to see that kind of grief on a person's face. Injustice, and people are going to pay. I mean, you can't get away from cause and effect. You can't. And I just dread what some of these people are going to have to pay over their millions of lifetimes. It's sad, but don't want to forget them. So go to that site. I mean, just put in Afghani family funeral and just find the pictures from the LA Times. They're very good. Bad. I wanted to talk about Hodgematodge, why I keep saying there won't be an election in November of 22. Not going to happen. For a number of reasons. The first reason is the conflagration, and it's hard to have elections when everything's blowing up all over the place. So that's reason 1. Now, reason 2, even if there's not explosions, there seems to be a consensus that the Democrats aren't going to do so well in the midterms, not only from a historical perspective that elections tend to go that way. In the previous years, when we had things that were really kind of like elections for real, it would be traditional that the president would have Congress for 2 years and have a chance to really do whatever they wanted to do, which usually with the Democrats means change everything to a third world country, and for the Republicans this means do as little as possible and change nothing and make nothing better. Either way, they lose. But in this case, they're saying it's going to be such a landslide because of the Petri dish administration and just the whole thing that's gone on in the last year and a half. Everything. They kind of lay it on the Democrats because they're associated with most of the mayhem, and that's obvious. So Democrats lose. Now, from my experience, the Democrats will do just about anything to not lose. And I mean anything. They will burn down cities. They will let people die. They will dismantle police enforcement agencies. They will open up borders to let anyone in with anything. They will dictate what kind of shots we take. They will dictate what kind of papers we have and whether or not we wear a certain ensemble when we go out to eat or go to a movie or a football game. And at the same time, they will allow a free-for-all for every other person outside of America. Anyone not a citizen can do whatever they want unless they're from a country that we basically betrayed, and they'll need their papers. They'll need their proper documentation. So, since the Democrats will do anything, it stands to reason they'll find a reason to declare martial law before the next election. or they'll find a reason to declare that they can't have an election because the pandemic from Epsilon and Mu are so bad that we can't possibly have a fair election because there's just the pandemic is running rampant. And most likely people will be dying, in massive numbers, and the Democrats will use that as a means of suspending the elections, because if you don't have an election, you won't lose, will ya? That works out well. Or cheat on such a grand scale if they do have an election, which I can't picture. Trying to look at the rate Petri dish is going, and obviously we're not going to impeach the Congress, so they continue, and hyperinflation and everything else hits. And I mean hyperinflation. I don't mean like, they're worried about inflation. Bread's going to be $3. Bread's going to be $10. Okay? And people are going to have to get raises in order to keep up with it. Which means more printing. The economy is going to collapse before the November 22. Come on. Anybody with half a brain knows it. So that's another reason that the so-called Democratic protectors of us all will decide that it's not in our best interest to have an election right now, because the economy's collapsed and all that. How can you have a proper election when there's no economy? When everybody's scrambling to buy a gallon of gas, they put their money together. The whole family is banding together to buy a gallon of gas. Disaster. No election. 2024, forget it. You kidding me? There's not going to be any more presidents after the last one. None. There might be lieutenants and colonels that are in charge, because they're going to need to be in charge. And I endorse them being in charge as long as they try to solve some of these problems. It's going to be even worse when they're trying to clear away rubble and, trying to de-radiate cities and, things of that nature. But yeah, I got a cheery one for you this morning. Started off with a bit of rosy prognostications from the voice of doom. And I think I'm living up to my word. I think I depressed you. And I think I embedded and inculcated dread into your hearts. So I consider my job well done. And I'm going to post this, and then I'm going to get some stuff done. I plan on being productive today. So, xing, xie xie, and ni hui fut song, whatever. Enjoy.